So you want to rock, because sometimes you just got to rock out. Welcome to Lancaster Hi-Fi. I want to talk about something like a top 10 of albums that I go to when I want to rock out. And, leaning towards the obscure and maybe not some of the most obvious choices, and very heavily weighted towards the mid-'80s when I was into punk rock. So, let's just get to it. Because we start with prog. King Crimson, Lark's Tongues and Aspic. Now, not an obvious, unless you're familiar with this album, and I wasn't when I bought it, not a super obvious rock out choice. But it rocks. And it rocks really hard. And I guess sort of part of the story, okay, so we're talking 1973. King Crimson had gone through a number of changes, number of personnel lineups. And there was sort of maybe even a frustration that the degree to which King Crimson could rock out live, had not been captured on vinyl until this record. And my tube amp is making a strange noise that it sometimes does when it's warming up. All right. And so I'm going to skip straight to the rocking out part, if I can. Woo. I mean, right? Jesus Christ. So, until this album, King Crimson had not really captured their rock outness. And just for context, I have to set it down and near the midpoint of that track, and it starts very quietly, and you're like, this is one of those great surprise tracks the first time you listen to it, because you're like, okay, God, I can barely hear anything. It starts with this like soft violin and it takes a good long time till all of a sudden it hits that sudden crescendo. And by that time you've turned the volume way up and you're like blown out of your socks. All right, here's my number 9. That was number 10. And these are in something like an order. This doesn't rock out all the way through, but this is Gentle Giant's second album. Find the way into this. A little bit of an odd cover. Odd of a wing fold, blah-de-blah. And Acquiring the Taste. This is their second album. Their first album was not their best album. And but it didn't really take them too long to really hit a nice stride, and they did so on this album. And I don't always listen to Gentle Giant when I want to rock out, but if I want to listen to prog and I want to rock out, and especially since Gentle Giant is like pretty much my favorite prog group, this is an obvious choice, and particularly the song, The House, the Street, the Room. And let's see, can I get it? Can I kick it? There's a cat prowling through. No, that's Black Cat. Sorry. Come on. All right. fucked it up. Yeah. So on the Vertigo label, same label as Black Sabbath, and I believe with this album they toured with Black Sabbath, which was not a great experience for them, I think. We're talking 1971, I think. So I'm going to skip to the... All right, you kind of get the idea. Gary Green goes into Guitar God mode, and it just takes off from there. Yeah, I'm probably going to get demonetized on this, but you know, I think people generally like me to keep the clips to a minimum of length. So kind of a, you know, when you're that kid who's into prog and you want to rock out, this was a good one to reach for. So it's probably one of their so-called darker albums. It doesn't rock real hard all the way through, and that wasn't Gentle Giant's thing, to rock hard all the way through. Their thing was to rock effectively when the time called for it, and in a way that would knock your socks off. Let's get to some rocking all the way through. Not quite. Flaming Lips. And Jesus, oh my God, the Flaming Lips. Amazing album art. This is my number 8. It's, I've got it on clear vinyl. Flaming Lips, you know, this is an album I reach for when I want to seriously rock out. It's not necessarily one of my most favorite albums. The songwriting isn't always to my taste in terms of hooks. But this one starts off really well. Let's just get to it.
Take this, brother. May it serve you well.
And so, come on, man. Sometimes the automatic features on my turntable fail. So we're into 1987, and there are several albums from that year. Now, I'm sure in this list, and I'm sure that is a... you know, that's not just that 1987 was a great year for albums that rocked. 1987 was a year when I was buying a lot of records. But it was a year that alternative music was sort of, you know, transitioning from punk rock to grunge, really. And this is one of the albums that I would put in that sort of really key period in alternative rock in the 80s. Flaming Lips, band out of Oklahoma City. Yeah, just kind of amazing. A little angsty, a little bit depressed, maybe. All right. Now goes back earlier for me. I didn't get this when it came out. This album's from 1980. Blue Oyster Cult, Cultosaurus Erectus. I got this, I think, after the next album. Was it the next album? Fire of Unknown Origin came out. And I was starting to get into Blue Oyster Cult a bit. Didn't know crap about Blue Oyster Cult. But this one is just, this is heavy metal. I mean, starts off with Black Blade, goes to Monsters, Divine Wind, Deadline, The Marshall Plan, Hungry Boys, Fallen Angel, Lips in the Hills, Unknown Tongue. Um, it's just real heavy metal themes all the way through. But in that 1980, before like thrash metal, but when they had, really found their sound, and after Don't Fear the Reaper had given them a big hit. This album had no big hits. This was just straightforward heavy metal, and let's give you a taste. Fucking metal. I just love that. This song, as far as I can tell, is about Elric. Elric was a fantasy comic book. I believe this is black and white. And Elric had a black blade. And Elric was sort of a tortured soul, doomed to wander the earth and basically massacre minions with his invincible sword and fighting abilities that the sword gave him. Yeah. Back to 1987 and the Lazy Cowgirls. If you're not familiar with the Lazy Cowgirls, I understand. They never made a huge splash as far as I know. This is their first album called Tapping the Source. I believe they all moved to LA from Indiana They moved from Indiana to LA. I believe I've got that right. And in order to, break into the music scene. And this fucking rocks. My copy is unfortunately quite warped. So it's pretty much full on all the way through. If you're wanting to rock out and you think that is pretty rocking out, it's pretty much just straightforward thrash rock all the way through. Some great titles, that one's called Can't You Do Anything Right? Bullshit Summer Song, No Name, Left, Heartache, Reoccurring Thing, Goddamn Bottle, Yakety Yak, which is a cover of the old 50s tune. Justine, Alan Says, and Mr. Screwdriver. And I'm sure Mr. Screwdriver in that case refers to the alcoholic cocktail. All right. More 1987. I don't know about you. If you don't know this album, if you don't know Dinosaur Jr., but I bought this album when they were still known as Dinosaur. I bought this album like the day or two after I saw them for the first time. And that, of course, when I saw them was the first time I heard them. A friend of mine, Mark Blitz, said, you got to come see this band with me. We went down to oh, I forget the name of the club in Boston. And I was just friggin' blown away, and I was like, can they possibly have gotten this on vinyl? I put this on, and yeah. Now, keep in mind, I put this on the turntable for the first time just after I'd seen them. Amazing band live. Lou Barlow played a Rick pretty much like that one. That I'm pretty sure that had something to do with me buying that particular Rick. Yeah, just really solid all the way through. Amazing live band. Jay Mashis would set up this horseshoe of pedals, and then Lou Barlow just friggin' essentially played rhythm guitar on the bass. 1987 again, and this is where we actually get to so-called grunge, right? Mudhoney, first grunge band that I heard, and I got a bit burned out on them, and kind of stopped giving them as much of a chance as maybe I ought to have in retrospect, to the extent, okay, this is actually 1988, yeah. To the extent that I had the chance to see them live and passed on it because I was just kind of over them. Just kind of silly, but, really silly, really. Ooh, good job. All right, but I have several 7-inches by them that came out prior to this. But this one was pretty friggin' awesome. Clearly, the album rocks. Actually, I think officially this is an EP. It's only got like 6 songs on it. I don't know if that might have been one of the reasons that I kind of gave up, got frustrated with them. I got tired of having to buy 7-inch EPs and 12-inch EPs, and like, come on, come out with a friggin' album. This was on Sub Pop before they got signed to Reprise, which I think their signing to the big label came after Nirvana. All right, well, I'm not going to pretend I was into Metallica back in the day. This is a brand new 180 gram pressing, remastered version of this, which is probably good because, 80s production being what it was. Being into all the punk rock and whatnot, you kind of weren't allowed to be into thrash metal. I don't know, if I have to try to explain that to people, then you weren't alive in the 80s. But let's just, this album just fucking rocks, and I'm just gonna cut straight to the track that really just is incredible, right? Now, what was my introduction to Metallica? My introduction to Metallica was long before I heard them. And actually, my introduction to thrash metal was Megadeth. I was curious, and around the same time that I bought the Dinosaur album, I bought Megadeth's album, So Far, So Good, So What, I think it's called. And that rocks, but not like this one does. Now, how did I even hear of them? Because we're talking the 80s, no airplay. None. People don't understand. The way you found out about music was through friends, through maybe just trying out a show. But, you know, is a punk rocker going to go to a metal show? You know, do you want to get into a fight? Although maybe that's more likely the other way around, a metal fan going to a hardcore show. Anyway, I had this coworker one summer who was in high school when I was in college, and he had a different band t-shirt on like every day, and Metallica was, of course, one of the bands he was way into. Where are we? Geez, I have not been keeping count. This is number 2, Joyride by Government Issue. This wasn't always my favorite Government Issue album. Government Issue had a hard time putting together a seriously consistent, solid album. I'd say their most solid album was the one that came after this. Written Word? No, it's Written Word is on it. The Fun Just Never Ends. But this one probably rocks the hardest, especially straight out of the gate.
No.
Damn, this album makes me smile. It's just, and the first side of this album is really pretty consistent, and then the second side it gets a little spotty. Starts off really well. Joyride starts off the second side, and that's an amazing song. But then they do another version of Hall of Fame, which is a decent song, but it was already on one of their earlier albums. And then it gets to like Notch to My Crotch and finishes off with These Boots Are Made for Walking. And it's, you know, so it's like, okay, that's kind of cute. It's kind of neat. But ultimately I feel like in the longer term, in the big picture for that album, it kind of detracts. But it's still number 2, okay? I mean, Jesus. Okay, here's my number 1. The Hard-Ons, Love is a Battlefield of Wounded Hearts. You can be forgiven for not knowing about the Hard-Ons. This was the first album I got by them. Australian band. This came out on Tang Records in 1989. Tang of Newton, Massachusetts. Australian, band. So I don't know when, whether this album came out the same time that it came out in Australia. Pretty much just fucking rocks and builds towards the end. And I'm going to play the last track called Kill Your Mum. this up. Did I get the wrong side? Alright, maybe I just didn't cue it up right. So that next to last song rocks pretty hard. And then it ends with this. So, this album, I don't know, it should be recognized as a thrash metal or thrash punk or whatever masterpiece, because it takes thrash metal influences and punk rock influences with really catchy hooks. Like, their songs have serious hooks. Pretty juvenile themes. I mean, they're not shy about just being kind of ridiculous. But you know, it's just fun. It takes on that aspect of metal where it's just like, dude, relax. Let's just have fucking fun. And fucking amazing album. All right. That's my top 10 I Wanna Rock albums. I mean, there are others that didn't make the cut, and I will give some honorable mentions. I felt there were kind of obvious choices, but what are some of the ones I took out? Pink Floyd's soundtrack to the film More has this song, the Nile song. That song just friggin' rocks. The album as a total doesn't rock hard enough to make this list. And then there's some obvious choices. Led Zeppelin's first album. Good God. It just... Moving Pictures by Rush. I mean, that album fucking rocks. And of course, you know, AC/DC, in particular Highway to Hell, just fucking rocks. But, you know, maybe those are some obvious choices. And I didn't want to make this all obvious choices. I wanted to make this, you know, my personal kind of stuff. All right. So anyway, no, I haven't been doing videos. I'm away from video editing software, trying to do all this in one take. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave me a comment. What are some of your favorites? Especially if you were mid-80s, you know, mid to late 80s thrash punk rocker like I kind of was. And I'll talk to you again when I talk to you. Cheers.